Raider Nation, good morning. It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, with all of the news and rumors that I think the nation needs to know today. Is Pete Carroll going to be the next Raiders head coach? Let's talk about it here. Let's also look at the latest around Robert Saleh and Patrick Graham, because I do think that those interviews that those two guys have could impact what the Silver and Black decide to do from a maybe defensive coordinator standpoint, looking at some other names if they don't get a guy like Pete Carroll. And then at the very, very end, I'm somebody that likes to look at smoke. I'm somebody that likes to look at a lot of different stories and paint a picture. Did the New York Jets and what they are doing today, did that maybe impact Ben Johnson's decision to take that job in Chicago? That's going to be the final story here on today's show. Let's first, though, kick this off with Pete Carroll. And when Johnson was announced as the Chicago Bears head coach yesterday, my mind instantly went to the former head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, and there's out there multiple reports that Carroll is now the front runner, the favorite for the Raiders job. And I know that this was the very first name that kind of got thrown out there when the Silver and Black decided to move on from Antonio Pierce. Carroll was like the very first name that got thrown out there and said, hey, the Raiders are interested in him. And then it kind of went to Ben Johnson and Pete Carroll. Well, the Raiders did interview Carroll last Monday. That's January 13th in person. And I think it was interesting that it was one of their very first, in-person interviews that they did. The Raiders clearly have something at least lined up. And when you saw everything that happened, and as quick as it happened when Ben Johnson went to Chicago, all the attention quickly went to Pete Carroll, which is now where my attention is going to go. He does have tons of head coaching experience. I know he's 73 years old, and he's an old dude, right? But he is a young 73. Like, in all honesty, I hope I look as good as Pete Carroll at 73. I hope I act the way Pete Carroll does at 73. I hope I have the confidence at age, I think he was like 68 or 69, to take his shirt off in front of a guy like DK Metcalf. He is a defensive-minded coach. He is a culture builder, which are two things that, I do think like defense is where our strong suit is. We need a culture builder. And what's also really interesting about this is when the Raiders went out and they brought in a guy like Jed Hughes. If you don't know who Jed Hughes is, literally look it up on YouTube. I put out a video. It's got 100,000 views on it. Check it out. But also Jed Hughes was a part of that regime that hired Pete Carroll back in 2014 with the Seattle Seahawks. And, that turned out to be a very good regime from top to bottom, a place where Carroll ended up winning a Super Bowl. This is going to be the pinned comment, though, and this is going to be the question that I want the entire nation to answer, because I'm just like all y'all, man. Yesterday was a tough day, right? Like, my voice is killing me. I'm hurting. My nuts are sore from getting kicked in the nuts so many times from Bears fans on social media. But if you're not used to disappointment as a Raiders fan, maybe you're a new fan. And I'm a new fan, but I'm ready to move on, because this regular season was really, really tough. And I'm ready to move forward. So, do you want the Raiders to hire Pete Carroll? Give me a yes, give me a no. You're about to get it with a YouTube ad break. Scroll on down and give me your answer. My answer is yes, if the Raiders also put a plan in place to find somebody that can replace Pete Carroll in the long run. Because to me, you would have hired somebody like Ben Johnson to get some stability for the long haul. No disrespect to Pete Carroll, longevity isn't in the cards for somebody that's 73. So if the Raiders want to go out and you hire Pete Carroll, but then you also bring in a very talented OC, maybe somebody like a Mike LaFleur who calls plays for the Rams. You bring him over maybe with a DC like Robert Saleh, because Saleh and LaFleur have a really good connection. My point is, you bring in Pete Carroll for a year or two, like a bridge head coach, and then you hand the keys over to somebody like a Robert Saleh or a young offensive-minded guy that you have a lot of confidence in. Personally, when you look at the interviews that the Raiders did, I think it's more likely that they would hand the keys off to a dude, maybe somebody like a Robert Saleh in the future, if he doesn't get a coaching job with the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is what we're going to talk about next year on the show. But I do want to give a huge shout out to the nation. We hit 184,000 subscribers bright and early this morning, and I just want to say thank you, because I know how difficult this year was, and I know how tough that Ben Johnson thing was. But I promise you, Chugs and I are going to do our best to keep you updated. We're going to do our best to put smiles on faces. And if you're just like me and you're like, all I care about now is moving on and figuring out a way for this Raiders team to be successful, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications. I also want to give a shout out to some real ones. We use the term real ones here at Chat Sports. That means you show up every day. You are a real one. You can be a real one as a husband. You can be a real one as a wife. You can be a real one as a father. You can be a real one as a child. I love the real ones that show up here and rock with Chugs and I, and these are 5 people that have been really showing a lot of love to us. Let's keep it moving here. Let's talk here a little bit about Robert Saleh, because if I just gave you my plan for why I would want the Raiders to hire Pete Carroll, I am going to be watching what happens around Saleh very, very closely. And the Jaguars, they got their second in-person interview lined up this week with former Raiders defensive coordinator Patrick Graham, former Jets head coach Robert Saleh, and Buccaneers offensive coordinator Liam Cohen. The Jags' job is not a popular job because the GM, Trent Baalke, people don't really like to work with him. And last offseason, they really couldn't even find a head coach. Doug Peterson just took the job because nobody else really wanted the job. I could see PG taking this gig for the simple fact of I don't know if he's ever going to get a chance. If I'm Robert Saleh, you got to think about taking that Raiders DC job because maybe it turns into a Raiders head coaching job. I also think Robert Saleh's got to consider taking that San Francisco job as DC, a place where he had a lot of success before and kind of gets his feet wet again and maybe gets another head coaching job, maybe somebody like a Dan Quinn. And then Liam Cohen, a young offensive mind. I would be worried if Cohen ends up going to the Jacksonville. Not so much to work with Trent Baalke, but there were rumors that depending on who the Jags could hire, they might switch up their GM, and I'm somebody that really likes John Spytek. If I was the Raiders, I would actually try to bring in Liam Cohen for an interview. So then Rappaport put out the schedule. And I do think that this is important because a lot of times the first person that goes in is the guy you want the most. The second, I would say, is probably the least, and then you put all the cards on the table for Robert Saleh on Friday. My point is, if the Raiders hire Pete Carroll, I'm going to be watching this Jag situation closely because if Liam Cohen goes into that interview, doesn't get hired. If Patrick Graham goes to that interview on Thursday, doesn't get hired. I think that tells you what they're trying to do with Robert Saleh. Maybe Robert Saleh takes the job or not, but to me right now, if you want Pete Carroll, you got to also want a great DC like a Robert Saleh, and then you got to want a great offensive coordinator, somebody that can be that OC type of dude. Like the way the Raiders tried to do last season with Cliff Kingsbury. They tried to bring in a OC that had head coaching experience. If you're going to bring in Pete Carroll, I want a DC with head coaching experience. I want an OC with head coaching experience or somebody that you could believe can be a head coach because Pete Carroll's not the long-term answer. So a lot of things to watch here around the Jags. Coming up, though, also the latest on Patrick Graham. We talked about it a little bit. Has an interview with the Jags. Also, today is a big day for the Bengals and Patrick Graham. We'll get into that here in just a moment. Today's show sponsor, Game Time. I love Game Time. They're all about creating those lasting memories. And if you're trying to go to the big game, maybe Game Time is going to be able to help you out here. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code ChatSports for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code ChatSports for $20 off. Download Game Time today. If you're wondering what time is it, it's Game Time. And they got this brand new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. What I love about using the Game Time app is that you're going to get that lowest price guarantee on any ticket to any event, all in pricing so you don't get slapped with crazy fees at checkout, and flash deals so you get even cheaper tickets the closer you wait to game time. I love being able to use these experiences, and my birthday is in about a month. My birthday is February 20th. My dad, he's coming into town, and we're going to hang out and celebrate. I'm going to be 32, kind of crazy. But one of the things that I have continuously done is I'm looking at events. And right now there's like a Mavs and Pelicans game, I believe, on February 21st. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the prices. I'm going to keep checking in. And then I'm probably going to get those tickets like an hour or two before the game. And if you're that mentality, then Game Time is the perfect app for you. You can find something in advance, track it a little bit, and then an hour, 2 hours right before the game, get the tickets. Those links are going to be available to y'all down in the comments, down in the description. You can see the views from your seats, lowest price guaranteed, last-minute tickets, flash deals, and when you're as busy as what I think Raiders fans are, and at any moment, like one thing that always scares me, if I buy a ticket and then I go to the game and then, God forbid, you get breaking news like the Raiders hire Pete Carroll, you're like, crap. And I get that that's going to happen once in a while, but I also know that I'm a busy dude and I wait till that last minute, and that's why I love me some Game Time. So a huge shout out to them for sponsoring the Raiders Report. All right, so now get into the latest here around Patrick Graham. And the latest around Patrick Graham also involves the Notre Dame defensive coordinator, Al Golden. So the reason why I bring this up is because last week it was reported that Al Golden and Patrick Graham are the two finalists for that Bengals defensive coordinator job. And I talked about it originally that I was like, I think PG's got a good shot to get that Cincy job. Then we talked about some of the things that head coach Zach Taylor said in regards to what they're looking for that next DC. But Ian Rappaport late last night said Notre Dame defensive coordinator Al Golden has emerged as a top candidate. I mean, literally, like, after the game. Like, Chugs and I were laughing. Like, yeah, I was gonna say, the game literally ended, and I think Ian was like, 3, 2, 1. Send that shit, man, which, it's kind of cold-hearted, but at the same time, that's how the NFL moves. That's how the football world moves. You got to be up on top of things, and you got to be moving quickly, just like the Raiders. You lost out on Ben Johnson. Guess what? Wipe your tears, keep it moving, because in the NFL, if you take too long crying about something, you're going to get bit in the ass. But I talked about maybe PG going to the Bengals, and maybe there's an opportunity where he gets the Jags job. Maybe there's an opportunity he gets the Bengals job. Though, based on the comments that Zach Taylor made on what he's looking for the next DC, I don't think PG's going to get it. I think they're going to end up going with Al Golden. Now, again, this is an old quote. And when I say old, it's a few weeks ago. They get the most out of their players, certainly, in terms of what he's looking for as the next DC. And I think you got to understand our division that we play in. You're going to play a 6 a year. That's going to dictate really where you end up at the end of the season. And so I think this division is different. I think when people come and they play all 4 teams in this division, they feel that immediately. And so you're certainly going to need a coordinator that has understanding of that. So the reason why I think Al Golden's going to get it instead of Patrick Graham, Graham doesn't have any AFC North experience. Golden was a linebackers coach for the Bengals for 2 seasons, so he has some of that AFC North experience. I don't know if Patrick Graham's going to end up without a job this year, and I hope that that's not the case because he's talented enough, and I hope that if he doesn't get the job with the Jags, if he doesn't get the job with the Bengals, I hope the Raiders are smart enough and going, hey, PG, I'd love to be able to figure out a way to keep you here on this staff, but I also understand if Patrick Graham wants to go try to be a defensive coordinator somewhere else, though some of these job opportunities are running out a little. But if the Raiders were to miss out on Robert Saleh, I am okay to the idea of bringing in Patrick Graham, you pairing him with somebody like Pete Carroll. I think that can work. Patrick Graham is a legit defensive coordinator, and that also means we get to keep a lot of our important staffers, from guys like Gerald Alexander to Ricky Manning to a guy like Rob Leonard. Coming up, did the Jets news impact Ben Johnson's decision? We spoke about this a little bit yesterday because some of the wheels started to turn, and again, you got to look at rumors, you got to look at tea leaves, it's important. And what I'm regarding here is this. So Ian Rappaport this morning is talking about Aaron Glenn, okay? And it's a monumental day for the Jets, apparently. Top target Aaron Glenn visits the Jets, and the goal is to keep him from leaving the building. The deal isn't done, and there's still some particulars to discuss, but if all goes well, he could end up today as the head coach of the Jets. This is not, I know the Raiders interviewed Aaron Glenn, but this is not exactly what I'm talking about in terms of did that impact Ben Johnson's decision. This is what I think impacted Ben Johnson's decision. According to Josina Anderson, I'm told Commander's assistant GM Lance Newmark is already on his way to the Jets building as of this morning. If you remember the Raiders, they interviewed Lance Newmark on Sunday, and that was somebody that was very well connected to Ben Johnson, also very well connected to Aaron Glenn from their time in Detroit. What if Ben Johnson wanted Newmark to come with him to the Raiders, and he goes, if I can't get Lance, I'm just going to go take the job at the better quarterback? And as Diana Russina reported, it was plain and simple. It was the quarterback of why Ben Johnson took that move. So again, let's hop back to that Lance Newmark discussion. If Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson talked, and Newmark said, I don't really want to go to the Raiders, I would rather go to the New York Jets job, and I would rather go work with Aaron Glenn. If you're Johnson and you go, well, if I can't get my GM, and that's one of the reasons why I would go to the Raiders, well, then why am I going to go to the Raiders? I'm just going to go to the Chicago Bears instead. I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm simply saying that maybe that could have been one of those things behind the scenes that happened, which really stirred up a lot because, yesterday, I think, was a very surprising day for a lot of Raiders beat reporters out there. It was a surprising day, I think, for all of us. And this is how I'm going to end this show, okay? And I'm not going to be one of these guys. I know how difficult it is to be a beat reporter. I know this show is called The Raiders Report, but I'm not a beat reporter. I don't want to be a beat reporter. I'm a Raiders fan that gives my opinion. And do I have sources? Yes. Do those beat reporters have sources? Yes. Like, you end up getting that. However, though, losing out on Ben Johnson, it sucks. No doubt. Time to move on, and that's exactly what we're going to do here as a YouTube channel. I hope that's exactly what we do as a fan base. And I saw a lot of hate going towards, Hondo yesterday. I saw a lot of hate going to Vinny. And all I'm saying is take it easy on those guys. It's not easy doing what they do. But at the exact same time, my job here is to be able to give the best information possible. And any report that you get from here on out from Vic Tafur, from Tashawn Reed, from The Athletic, from Vinny, from Hondo, we just got to take it with a grain of salt, and you got to look at it as an opinion until they're able to prove that they do have sources, until they're able to prove that they are hearing things inside of the building, because it's not just a one-time thing. There's been so many swings and misses over the past few years, and it's tough with all these different regime changes. And I hope I'm not throwing a lot of shade at those guys because, again, I respect what they do, but I also got to be able to respect my audience, and I got to be able to respect what I do here. And I'm just going to take everything that those guys say as not as a report. I'm going to take it with a grain of salt, and I hope the nation does the exact same thing. We're going to stay up to date, everything going on around Pete Carroll. Obviously, if the Raiders hire him, I'll go live the next time you guys are going to see me today, 4 p.m. Eastern time, here on the Raiders Report.